everybody, and welcome to the November issue of the KLTaylor Marketing Newsletter. Now, we're doing it in a little different format today. I'm going to be joined by the president of KLTaylor Marketing, Kevin Taylor. There you are.
Hi.
So we're actually doing this, we're experimenting with a two-way today. Instead of just being me, I'm going to have Kevin join me. And as we continue doing the newsletters through the months, we're going to try different ways of recording to better the show. Plus, Kevin is a pretty cool guy, so it's a pleasure to have him. Hey, Kevin, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me on the KLTaylor newsletter video.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting. I mean, this is our second issue now. You and I started talking about this towards the end of August, that we wanted to find a way where we can communicate with our audience and present some ideas, some strategies to help them in their businesses, but also their personal lives. Do you want to talk about what you think of the newsletter and what your goals are for the future with this?
Yeah, so for years, I've provided advice and guidance to a lot of different people, and I realized that, like most people, that same kind of questions come up, and what I was sharing with one person, another person could benefit from. And so I've always wanted to do something like this. As a one-man show for so many years, you just, have a limited amount of time to do things. And so now that the team's expanded with you and Joanne, that frees up some time and some abilities. You each bring your own skills and personalities. And so this just gives the opportunity for us to share those tips, that guidance with other people. And I think obviously video is a great way to share information for it to be digestible. I wanted people to realize that these things, obviously there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of ways you can do the same thing, but in different ways. And having it as a conversation allows that to be revealed. And that's essentially what marketing is it's a communication, whether it's internal marketing with a team or, board members, or if it's external communication with clients or vendors or whatever. All it is conversations held in different ways. And I think, having these conversations where people can hear that, okay, well, everything's not always so clean cut. Usually it's not clean cut. And that's the importance of working with other companies, consultants that specialize in certain areas, because if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. And so by working with specialists, you can, really leverage the knowledge in the best way that suits your unique needs, because almost every organization that I've worked with is unique in some way or another, but a lot of technologies or, solutions or methods of marketing are very geared to a very set type of organization. And so there's a lot of times modifications that need to be made. And I think having that as a conversation, you start to learn what are some modifications, and it kind of makes you feel a little bit more confident in doing that, because you realize there's nothing wrong with you and your organization is not broken for being unique. It's just the way it is, and you have to modify and adjust as you go.
So with that out of the way, we're going to go into our theme of November, which is going to be about transition, because we're going into a new season. We're about to get into winter. And of course, we have Thanksgiving coming up. And so we decided to incorporate that into the theme too. With transitions, they're a constant, right? You can't really avoid them. They're necessary to keep a business alive, to thrive, whether it is leadership, software, products, it happens. And not only is it going to happen, it needs to happen. And on the personal side, it's evident that whether we like it or not, transitions, major transitions, are going to occur. It can be a big move to another city, switching careers, education, family dynamics, loss in the family, having a baby, or marriage. And one of the things that you and I, Kevin, talked about when talking about how we can prepare ourselves for transition within our organization and our lives is learning to give thanks, which leads into Thanksgiving coming up at the end of November, which is we should pause and give thanks for what we were doing before, how far it took us in our lives up to that point, and understand the potential for a better future that this transition provides for us. And before I let you talk about it, I want to go over some of the ways that we cope with transitions. And one of the things that I find useful, and you and I talked about this earlier this week, is that it is important to find our anchor moving forward. What we should do is identify what has helped us get to where we are and what is going to help us transition into this new phase of life, which can be for a lot of people. Their anchor can be getting support, whether it is support internally within their organization. If it's in your own personal life, support can look like a friend close by, it can look like a family member. And another way of finding that anchor is simply through communication, which does fall into getting support. But I think one thing that, especially guys, but we're not good at doing is communicating how we are feeling. And sometimes that allows us to reframe the situation going forward. And a big personal example for me about really understanding what an anchor is when I was younger, my family moved over from America to England. My parents are missionaries, so I was a missionary kid. We did a lot of traveling. And when I was 7 years old, we moved from Florida to sunny old England. And by sunny old England, I mean cold, gray, terrible. And it's a different culture and a whole new lingo. Having to learn to drink tea and finding out what on earth a pub is sounds like an illness when you first hear it as a kid. Adjusting to this new country was the only path forward for me. As a kid, my parents said, we're moving to this country, and I just had to be okay with it. I didn't have a choice. I had to adapt. However, I was able to see the good in my life in America as a kid. And one of the things I'm most grateful for, even now to this day, was that being a missionary kid, I went to different areas of America and I learned how to create relationships on the fly and to connect with people and to make friends. As a kid, really what you have to do is you have to prove why you're awesome to hang around with, right? You have to be energetic. You have to talk about the toys you love, the games you love, and you understand the connections that you need to make with other people. And I had to learn that at a young age. And I remember when I was 7, like that was my currency, was being able to connect with other people. And one of the things that helped me with my transition, even as a kid, was understanding that what I had before is going to help me moving forward, which is my ability to communicate, my ability to connect with other people. And so that made the transition and the idea of living in this new country actually a blessing, because not only did it give me an exciting future, it gave me a great opportunity to expand on what I had previously learned as a kid. And when you and I were talking about November's theme of transition, there was a lot of introspection and retrospection that really came to light and really taught me, hey, there's this lesson that you learned when you were young that you're still utilizing to this day. And I think whenever we have these big moments of transition, one thing that we can always try and do to see if we can get more out of it is what has led us to this point to be successful and to get us to where we are, and how can we utilize that to move forward. For me, that was looking at where I was from moving from America to England and what helped me while I was in America and what's going to help me moving forward in England. And for me, my lesson of having to connect with other people in order to be happy, that was my anchor. That was my thing of, all right, I am able to do this. And I know that I can be confident, because that was another thing that was important, was confidence moving forward. And it built a foundation for me to move forward in my new life in England. Can you think of anything in your life where you've had to deal with a transition?
Yes. So as a business owner, transition is almost a daily process because you're wearing so many hats, transitioning from doing the website design to working with the client to, creating the invoices. Those are all minor transitions that happen multiple times during the day. But like you said earlier, there's also these major transitions that when we talk about change and transition, that's usually what we're thinking of as the more major ones.
Yeah.
And so, of course, going from being an employee to having your own business, that's a big transition. Moving away from home for the first time, that's a big transition. And, one of the things we talked about earlier, you mentioned it, your ability that you learned as a kid to connect with others because it was almost a necessity of the transition you went through.
Yeah.
what I've learned through all of my transitions is that if I can identify how one experience can connect to the next experience, it makes that transition a lot smoother.
Yes.
The easy way to talk about this is work life. If I had a job doing graphic design over here, and then I was getting a job in customer service, those sound kind of pretty different. One's computer oriented. You don't really need to talk to people too much. You're just designing. And then on the other side, that's all you're doing is talking to people. So they sound very different, but I guarantee you there are some underlying skill sets that translate. For instance, and all this is off the top of my head, so there's probably better examples. But
throwing you on the spot.
Yeah, but if you think about graphic design these days, it's computer based. Well, also customer support is computer based these days. So your confidence in learning a computer software well enough to do design translates into using a computer smooth enough that when you're doing customer support, you're able to move fast enough to keep people aren't having to wait on you. So that's just a rough example, but identifying those skill sets that transition from one area of life or from one experience to the next, to me, that's one of those anchors that you can lean on. And if you can identify them, they're always there, even if we're unconscious of them. But if you can identify them consciously, that anchor also becomes part of your support that you can lean on through that change. Realizing it allows you to amplify that skill to make that transition smoother and easier overall.
And when you and I have talked about living in different areas and adjusting to different seasons, we talk about that the way that you and I normally start off the week is really it signifies what's going to happen for the rest of the week. It's an indicator, right? And so if I don't in the morning wake up at a certain time and work out or go out for a walk, that the rest of my day is going to go either downhill or it's not going to feel the same. And then I think for a lot of us, whenever we are going through a certain change, we can find our own schedule and cycle of our days to be fairly chaotic. I think that's fair to say. And I think it's important for us to find an anchor and also how we are handling those situations, because if we are not able to control ourselves in that perspective with the way that we're handling our day-to-day lives, well, the big picture is going to seem like it's falling apart. And I think that's also very important. And we're going to go back real quick to the business side of things, because I just thought of something. When I started at KLTaylor, we were using a video editing software called InVideo, which is really easy to use, and it did the job. We used it for a few projects. I used it with the client FSHP. So accustomed to it after all of those projects, and I had learned the ins and outs of the software. More importantly, I learned what I wasn't able to do with it and what I was able to do with it. And then you introduced me to Flixier, a new editing software that you wanted us to try out because it had features that would allow us to creatively express ourselves better for future projects. It was an important opportunity to be better as an organization and provide more for our clients. And when you brought it up to me, I was quite hesitant at first because I had become so familiar with InVideo and the idea of potentially learning how to use new features and getting familiar with a new interface. I mean, I'm a young guy, but that was still a little bit frightening because I just got used to InVideo. I was comfortable with it. And then I remembered how when I first joined and you introduced me to InVideo, there was a learning process of how to use the software, getting used to the interface, and how to use that software to better tell stories. It allowed myself to grow as a creator. Once I became accustomed to InVideo, I was really grateful for the hours of frustration before getting used to that software. So then I realized while you were trying to introduce me to Flixier, I was like, dang it. Flixier A could do the things that I can't do with InVideo. So there's a clear benefit from utilizing that. But it was also another great opportunity to grow in my communications role within the organization and as a storyteller. And this is exactly what helped me in the first place with InVideo, leaning into my desire to be a better creative and storyteller.
Yeah, so, people tend to get overwhelmed when I bring up software because I think they have that same initial feeling that you felt of, "Oh, great, I gotta," if I'm gonna use a new software, I gotta spend time learning it, and that's
Yeah.
true. However, what I found, because we now have access to I have a list, over 200 different pieces of software for different things, of course. And what I've learned over the course of time is that that's one of those transferable skills. What you learn in video, probably 80% of it translated into Flixier. And so you're not really
Yeah.
starting from scratch. And that's one video editor to another video editor, but it also applies to other systems as well. Moving from a video editor to a website editor, yeah, of course there are going to be some changes there, but there's going to be some core pieces that translate from one to the other. And so the first thing I always have to deal with clients when we talk about software is that initial wall that comes up, like, I don't want to deal with another
Yeah.
software. But usually once we get them in there and we can show them, how it works, I try to relate it to other software. Most people have used email or Microsoft Word or something like that.
Yeah.
And so there's certain areas of these softwares that if I can translate it to something they've used, it makes that learning curve easier. And, so not only does that apply to software, but it applies to every other area of life. It's identifying those underlying skill sets, what you talked about earlier, a foundation, understanding that you have a foundation of knowledge that even though you learned it in one area of life, maybe you've learned a certain communication skill of how to deal with family or friends, that still translates into business in how you can, handle challenging situations there. The same applies to software and anything else. I think taking the time to reflect and look at what your foundation is, from time to time, especially as you're going into a transition, recognizing, okay, what are the underlying foundational skills or, resources that I have that are going to help me in this process. That way, when you get to those bumps in the road, when you're like, oh, I need help, you already know what your resources are, or what you have to lean on. And what I found in life is that we're never presented a challenge or put in a situation that we don't already have access to the resources to resolve. It's just, I don't know if it's a natural law or what, but it seems to be that you're never presented with a challenge that you don't have the resources to deal with. And usually it's not the lack of access to a resource. It's usually that we're not thinking of it as a resource. Like you talked about earlier, men in our communication skills, one of the things we're most hesitant to do is ask for help. But, if there's ever a situation where we don't personally have the resources to deal with it, there's somebody we're connected to that can help us through that. And being willing to speak up and ask for help. Most people, I would say everybody loves to help other people in some way or another. And so when we ask for help for those situations, we're actually giving those people an opportunity to feel good about themselves and add joy to their life, because I know I feel good when I help other people. And so by me asking for help, I'm giving them that opportunity to feel good and probably resolving my problem.
I want to go into our next topic, which is every newsletter we're aiming to give not only a theme for the month, which can help you in your personal life, but also a marketing slash business advice and tip. And I'm going to throw one out real quick, Kevin, and then I'm going to hand it over to you for another idea. But one thing that we put out on our social media recently, and actually, I think you were the one who mentioned this to me in one of our meetings, was when you create a new account on a website, it's better to use your email and password rather than opting to link your social media account just to save time. Normally, the website will give you the option to link your social media account to your new account instead of having to create a new password and new username. But you and I were talking about how if you do that, it can cause issues wanting to log in into the future and change your account details. Instead, you should create a new username and password to avoid any hassle with changing passwords, because it's a convoluted process in order to change it. And that was one thing you mentioned to me about if you're making a new account, it's much better and it will end up saving you more time to just use your email and use a password rather than directly link into a Facebook, Instagram, for example. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, so I've obviously used a lot of software, and that was one of those hard lessons I learned. A lot of times you're given, the option to log in with Facebook or your Google account, sometimes LinkedIn and others, depending on the platform. But and I used those a few times, and usually, I don't know what a percentage is, but I would say 20-30% of the time, if I ever wanted to go back in and adjust where those notifications were going through email, since it's linked to my Facebook or something like that, it's associated with that email. And for instance, my Spotify account, I signed up with using my Facebook login, and then I wasn't able to change certain account settings, like notifications and things like that. They may have fixed that since, but I found that it's much safer and less struggle down the road to use your email and a password. And then usually you can go back once you're logged in, you can link your social accounts. So if you want them linked for other purposes, you can still do that and take advantage of that integration. But as far as like managing your account, you usually have more control over it if you start with an email and a password versus using a social login. And that saved me a lot of time having to change, especially in business where you may, 5 years down the road, you may rebrand your company. And if it's tied to an account that you can't really access, then you're going to have to create a whole new account using your new business. But if it's tied to just an email and password, you can send yourself a reset or update your password and that sort of thing. So, that one has saved me a lot of headache. And I think, it's tempting to just click those buttons and not create a new account. But especially if it's something for business, definitely recommend it using a password, email password setup.
Yeah, it's also a lot safer because if your social media account does get hacked, or if someone logs into it that isn't you, then your information to your linked account on other websites will also be exposed. So it's important to be very careful with that.
Yeah, and if you're cognizant of like the Big Brother stuff, censorship and monitoring, that's another issue altogether. But Facebook and a lot of these social platforms are known for shutting down accounts for they say in violation, but then they don't give details of what that violation is, and so you basically lost your account. And so I mean, if that happens and you logged in with another system using that, now you're stuck. You got to start all over again. So,
Yeah. And now, was there any other marketing advice you want to give?
Yeah, I thought this month we would touch on Gmail a little bit. It's another tool that we use a lot. That's our company email goes through Gmail, and a lot of our clients use Gmail. And I'm not sure people are fully aware of some of the features in there. So I thought I would just touch on one today. And so let me share my screen here quickly. So this is one of our email accounts. And the feature I wanted to show today was the use of filtering, so that it's really easy to organize things and set up some kind of automations to take care of things for you. So here in this email, this is an email here from the Healing Arts Alliance, which was a previous client of ours, but I was also on the board of this organization for a few years. It's a great local Tallahassee, Florida organization. But this is an email from their newsletter that they sent out just last week or 10 days ago. And let's say I wanted to have all of the emails from them, because this is an organization I feel connected to and I want to keep up with. Let's say I wanted to have them all go into one folder per se. Gmail doesn't really use folders like in Outlook. Outlook uses folders. At least it did back in the days when I used it. What Gmail uses is called tags. And so at the top here, you can see this inbox and support. These are tags I've set up, but you can set up tags for anything. And so typically what I've done in my own email account is set up tags for each client. And that way, if I'm ever looking for an email from them, I just click on their name, which you can see over here on the side. I just click on their name, their tag, and I can see all the emails from them. And so it really helps finding things a lot easier. But you can do it by any kind of category you want to. So in this case, let's say I wanted to find more emails from the Healing Arts Alliance, and then have them be tagged every time they come in automatically. So I can, from this email here, I can click on this, I call it tags, I guess they call them labels. I can click on this labels icon and either click on a label I already have or create a new label. So in this case, I don't have a label for them. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. So is their initials that we use. So I'm just going to call it that because I'll know what that is. And then you can also, just like folders, you can have folders and subfolders. With labels, you can have the label nested, or a sub label basically, if you wanted to. So if I check this box, I can put this folder under another one. So if I had a label already for newsletters, for instance, I could put the label under the newsletters, and then I know that, I know where it's at. But for this one, I'm just going to create it by itself. So now you can see my new label over here. And just for fun, if you click on these dots, you can actually change the color layout of it so that it stands out a little bit more. So I like to do that personally because I'm a customization
make it
freak,
prettier,
so.
right? Yeah, make it
and
prettier.
when you're looking, when you're looking in your inbox, the colors actually become very helpful because you train your eye what color for which tag. And so like red, kind of a darker red is our support tag. So that it's easier for those to stand out. But that was how you do it manually. The way to do it automatically, though, since I have this email open, I'm going to click these three dots, and I'm going to go filter messages like these. And so from here, I have a few options. In this case, it was sent to our support email address. But instead of filtering, and that's actually, if I close this, you can see all of these have a support tag on them. It's because they're meeting this criteria of sending it to our support email address.
Okay.
But let's say instead of that, let me get back into the email. Let's say I wanted to filter it by their email address. So I know they're using this email as their newsletter email. So I just highlighted it and copied it. And I'm going to go back into, oops, I'm already in a filter. So let me, if you already filtered once, it won't let you, actually, there we go. So right here from any email from this email address, and then you can do all these other filters too. So if it's sent to a certain thing, if the subject's a certain thing, if it includes certain words, if it doesn't have certain words, there's a lot of ways you can build this filter to meet whatever needs you're looking for. So, if you have a specific, let's say you have a software that sends you notifications, usually that it'll come from the same email address, but sometimes notifications along with other things come from the same email address. You could use the subject line because a lot of times notifications have a very specific format that they use. But anyways, once we get our filter set up, what I like to do first is click search. And so that makes that way I can verify that it's pulling what I want to see. So now these are all the emails that I have in my inbox from that email address. And so looks like it's working like I want it to. So I'm going to click on this filter again. And all I did was click these little, I don't know what to call that, like level adjusters.
3 bar thing.
Yeah, that's your filter, your search options. So I'm going to go back into here, and you'll see this link here, create filter. So if I click on that, now anything that matches that criteria, which comes from that email address, I can have it do any of these things. So I can have it automatically archive, which generally means I won't see it. So if there's some kind of notifications that you don't really need to see, but you want to save them for historical reference, then you could use that. But I won't go through all of these, but you can see there's a lot of options here. So never send to spam. That's a good one for things that are very important to you, making sure that they don't end up in your spam filter. This labels here is what we just did. So I'm going to choose that ha label. So everything that matches that email address is going to come in with this label automatically. If you can set up a forwarding address, or you can have it forward to some other email. So for instance, if I had a system notifications that I know that all of those are really meant for Damien, I can set up an automatic forwarding for those emails. So when they come to me, the system automatically sends them to Damien. And so, that can save you a lot of time for some recurring things like that. For things that are junk, you can just automatically delete it. So anyways, these are the ones I usually use. I usually apply a label. If I'm setting up a filter for it, I usually don't want it to go to spam, so I check that. And then this last one, if you don't check this last one, it'll only start doing these things from this point forward. All the ones that came in previously, it won't do this for. But in this case, I want all of those previous emails also to be labeled with this label. So I'm going to check. I almost always check this bottom checkbox here so that it applies to all the emails that are in there that already match this criteria. So from there, I'm just going to click create, and it's done. Now I have this label over here. You can see there's a 4 there. That shows me there's 4 unread messages in there. So if I click on that, there they all are. You may say, oh, where's your tag at? An interesting thing, it doesn't show the tag when you're, or the label, I'm sorry. It doesn't show the label when you're looking at the label. It shows the other labels. So like if I go into support here, notice the support label goes away, but the inbox label stays. So if you do that and you're like, where did my label go? It's because you're looking at the label. So everything you're looking at has that label. So I guess they assume you don't need to see it on there because you know what you're looking at.
Right.
So, anyways, there's a lot of other features in Gmail, but I thought this was a very handy one. I use it regularly. I got all kinds of filters set up for different notifications, different client emails. I have filters set up for you and Joanne so that I know where to find stuff you've sent me. It really makes going back and finding things so much easier later on.
I mean, we always talk about how can we have effective communication too. And the idea of forwarding the emails automatically to another email address is really beneficial if you're in communication with your own client or with another organization and you're in constant communication with them, but also you need somebody internally to also know the information. And so I can definitely see how setting that filter going forward for forwarding those emails with that specific label can be really useful. What is the main benefit that you can see like from our clients and our members using these filters?
Well, for instance, our project management system that we use, the client portal is what we call it. We send out, there's notifications that come from that system to let them know when, I don't know, when we've assigned something for them to do, or we've sent them a message in the system, things like that. And there's a very specific email address that those come from, which is updates@KLTaylormarketing.com. And so that would be one very self-serving use that I would think of as, set up a filter for those messages so that you know where to find project updates for your project. Like I said, we can send messages through that system. And so that way you're making sure you're not missing any of those. And then, if you have a tag associated with them, you can see how many you need to read to get caught up. So it's a very easy way to see, okay, these are project updates. They're probably time sensitive. I need to check them out. So that would probably be the best use that I can think of right now. I'm sure there's lots of other use cases, but that would be a good one.
I agree. It allows us to stay more organized. So this is going to lead us into our final segment of the newsletter, which we're going to share some videos and some memes that made us laugh over the month. And without further ado, here they are. Jennifer. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us for this newsletter. Having your insight and the knowledge that you've been able to give us has been really valuable. Thank you for joining us, and we're going to do this again. So we're going to have to get you on for like either the next newsletter or a future newsletter for sure.
Yeah, and just as a kind of an early drop of this, speaking of transition, we noticed, there's a lot of people transitioning from being employees working somewhere to starting their own business, maybe as a consultant or, something like that. And so we're working on a package specifically for those kinds of businesses, where it includes a website, it'll include an appointment session scheduling software, which would allow you to also take payments for those sessions, and it has a built-in video conferencing feature. So you have a website, you have appointment setter, and you have a video conferencing system all in one package that we create and set it up for you, and then we give you training and hand it off. So stay tuned. That's to come. But just another way that we're trying to help people through transitions in ways that we have the skills to help.
Of course. And then after you finish this video, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and you follow us on all of our social media accounts so you can get further advice for your marketing needs and your business needs. And make sure if you have any marketing questions to email us over at KLTaylor@KLTaylormarketing.com. And that's all from me. Anything else you want to add, Kevin?
That's it. If anybody has any questions, wants support, or just some guidance, you can visit our website, KLTaylormarketing.com, and there is a schedule tab where you can schedule a free consultation with us to talk about your unique situation, and we'll do the best to get you on the right path with minimum time delay and headache figuring it out yourself.
And that's going to be it from us, and we'll see you next month for the next edition of the KLTaylor Marketing Newsletter.
Bye, everybody.